Good evening. Hope you all are having a fantastic day today. My name is Bronson Long. This is my instructor, Master Autry.
How you doing, sir?
I'm doing
well.
Hey
guys,
sir.
how you doing?
I'm doing well. Hope you are.
Yes, sir. Doing
Good.
wonderful.
I'm so glad to hear it. And today we're going to be doing another episode of the Honest Podcast, the Honest Concepts Podcast, where we talk about not just our walk together in martial arts, but more importantly, our walk through life.
Yes, sir.
I've been taking martial arts under you for many, many years. And I have to tell you, it has been an honor and a pleasure just to learn from you and be able to be guided in the ways, not
Thank
just in the dojo, but more importantly in life, and be able to grow this way.
Yes, sir.
And we have so much time, so much fun times just hanging out and having these conversations. And now we get to share them with other people, and they get to share their conversations with us. And it's a really, really good time. So
it is.
Every week we have a new topic.
We do.
Last week was your turn. This week was my turn. And the topic I wanted to choose for this week is how to recognize a moment of growth, not just within ourselves, but also within others. And I've got a couple of fun little stories to tell about it. And if you don't mind, I'm going to take one from you.
You go ahead. I'm going to sit back and drink coffee.
Sure, great. Okay, great. So, as instructors, and you know this much better than I would, you just get to see a lot of people grow on a martial art floor. And through life, you watch people, they take losses, they have wins, they get down, they get up, and growth seems to come from all of those places. It's just all about how you look at it.
Right.
Sometimes when you lose something, in a lot of ways, you get to grow from it.
A good point.
Yes,
That's
sir.
true. That's so true.
Yes, sir. Now, I'm going to steal this story from you. I've got your permission to do it. So, I don't know all of the names. I wouldn't say them if I did. But I know you were taking a karate, when you first started in martial arts. That's a lot of punching, a lot of kicking. And if I'm not mistaken, when you were doing it, it was still full contact back then.
It was.
Yes, sir.
You
Yes,
couldn't
sir.
punch in the face, but you could kick to the face. But you had to punch hard as you could and kick to the stomach and the
Yes,
ribs.
sir. Yes, sir. That's pretty intense.
It was.
Yes,
it
sir.
was.
Right. And they do a lot of conditioning,
Yes, sir.
hit your bodies and hit your legs and
Yes, sir.
stuff. And so one thing karate is known for is their deep stances that they would take. And when you first started martial arts, you were in there learning these stances. And there was a gentleman in class who every time you get into one of those stances you're working on, he'd come by and he'd kick you in the leg, just, trying to help you out and build up your muscles and stuff. And he'd kick you in the leg all the time. Every time you'd see him coming, you knew it was coming. He's going to kick you in the leg. Well, as time progresses and the years go by, you stay in the school, and he stops coming to class. You don't see him as often. Well, you just keep on coming. You stayed the path, you stayed the course, and before you know it, that belt got darker and darker.
Right.
Wisdom and experience in the martial arts got deeper. And lo and behold, one day you turn up and you look up, and there he is walking into the room. You say, there he is. And of all the things that could have possibly happened to him, he's now got to train stances, and you're watching him. And you turned right next to him. He's in his stance, and you had every opportunity in the world to kick him in the leg and get him back.
Right.
And what you did instead was you patted him on the shoulder and said, glad to see you. Glad to have you back.
I did.
It's such a great story, but I've heard you tell the story probably about 5 or 6 times in my life. And a handful of times after hearing you tell that story, you followed it up with, that's the moment when I knew I'd become a martial artist. That's the moment I knew I'd become an instructor. In those moments when you make a choice, you make a decision. Sometimes it's not always the easiest decision. I'm sure there's a little bit, if it was me, there's a little piece in there that would have wanted to kick them. But when you make those hard choices, it seems to me that those choices are what determines someone becoming stagnant or someone choosing to grow. Almost like sometimes growth is a choice. It's all about how you look at it.
You're exactly right. Like I say, I was a white belt, and he'd kick me every single day.
Yes,
he'd
sir.
kick me hard as he could, and the leg hurt, and so it really pretty bad. Anyway, I'm going to turn the tables a little bit on this question.
Okay, sure.
Instead of taking, right now, we'll answer that in a minute, but instead of taking what causes you the growth, let's see what causes you not to have the growth to start with.
Oh, okay.
People come in, and it's only one thing. And now, like I say, I always say I'm not a psychologist, so, but it's one thing, in my opinion. People come into school or anywhere, just people that you know in general. Yeah, they're the best skier, they're the best basketball player, they can bowl the best, they can play golf the best, they do everything first time, everybody thinks they're a pro, and they just talk about themselves all the time in a big crowd, And then, next thing you know, they're talking bad about other people, which puts them down, makes them feel even better. That person will not grow. There's only one thing stopping him, and it's him. It is.
Yes, right.
You've got to get your mindset. I mean, you truly do. We say that, and it's easy to talk about. But those people they just don't grow. I don't know if you know anybody this way, but they just refuse to grow that way.
Yes, sir.
I put down 3 things I want to talk about: thought, feelings, and behavior. Okay. When you talk about growth for me, like I say, this is for me: thought, feelings, and behavior. First thing, we focus on our thoughts. Let's say that guy that kicked me. I focus on the thoughts. Do I want to be just like him, or do I want to be better? I wanted best for me, so my thoughts were in that direction. My next thing was, you have to understand your feelings. Do I want to be upset? How am I going to understand what's going to happen? If I act this way, or if I act this way, how are my feelings? What's going to be the process of those feelings? And the last thing is behavior. If you do the first thing, behavior falls right in line.
Wow.
It does. If you do the 2 things right, then the feelings will just go right there. You don't have to think about it. I mean, the behavior will fall right in there. So that was the 3 point. I just scribbled those down, but that's how I feel about it. But it's the most important thing is you can't think about yourself. I want to be a better martial artist. I want to be a better husband. I mean, people are listening to this and yeah, it's true.
Sure.
And I wouldn't hurt a flea.
Yes,
unless
Right.
something different. But I want the best for everybody. I've had people to do some bad things to me through the years. I don't want nothing bad to happen to them. I want them to be successful.
Yes, sir.
Because here's what happens. If I have bitter towards them, that means I have bitter in myself.
That's
and that's
right.
a hard thing to get over.
That's
It
true.
really is.
Right.
It truly is. So that's where growth comes from.
Wow.
For me.
Wow, well said.
Well, thank you.
You're so very right. It is a hard thing to get over. And bitterness has an odd way of finding its way, just nestling itself into your heart,
Right.
And it's hard to get rid of it sometimes because a lot of times there's a lot of things on top of it that are covering it up.
And it flares up.
Oh, sure.
I mean, just riding down the road, you're thinking, that pops in your mind. You're like, I haven't thought of that in 2 years.
Wow.
And that person that lied about me or did something to me, I wonder where they're at. And then you think, well, I hope they're doing okay.
That's right.
You don't want to think that
Right.
in the beginning. But if you do that, then you're like, wow, I'm a better
Right.
person. And you are.
Yes,
you know?
It's. I think mindset is exactly right, and in a lot of ways, it seems to be a choice. Like you said, behavior.
Yeah.
When you look at those things, what is good for me? What is the right thing for me to do? My wife always picks on me because I don't care if you're my dog, you're my best friend, you're my brother, whatever. My wife always laughs because I always have the terms I use. I say, what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. You can't play any favoritism towards either side, regardless of who's in question. And that includes even if myself is in question. If I've done something wrong, what's wrong is wrong. If I've done something right, well, good. What's right is right.
Right.
And we have to keep on that path. You've told me that my whole life. You have to stay on that path. It's the only way. And growth takes a lot of time in doing that. But it is a choice. I think you're right on that.
Ms. Autry and I always talk about these little stories. We hadn't been married, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, and we were having some hard times trying to get things going. And actually, we were just strapped. We were trying to work. I was trying to start a martial arts school. And it was hard. She was working 2 jobs. I was working 2 jobs, and money just didn't go. We walked in some store. I forget what. It's some big department store one day. I had exactly $1 in my pocket. Exactly $1 till payday. I don't think Ms. Autry probably had $1 or $2 if we were lucky back then. This was years ago, 35 years ago. I looked down, there was a diamond ring sitting on the floor. Did I tell you the story? There was a diamond ring sitting on the floor. I was like, okay. I picked that diamond ring up. I mean, I knew I was going to try to get back to the owner, but how do you find out? So we walked around that store for about an hour, right? About an hour, Ms. Autry. I was waiting for somebody over the intercom to say, hey, we lost a diamond ring. I was going to take it to them. So that didn't happen. I was like, then I thought, well, should I take it and pawn it? I said, well, no, I'm going to get it back to the owner.
Right.
There was a security guard sitting there. And I was like, well, he's got a badge on. He's a security guard. Maybe he'll help me. So I walked over to him. I said, sir, I just found this diamond ring on the floor. I've walked around here for an hour. I've got to go. Is there any way we can get it back to her? Do you know what? He said, let me have it. He said, I'm sure it's one of the girls upstairs. They lost it. I'll give it to her. I'm like, yeah, that never made it back. But I did the right thing.
Right. You did what was right.
But we talked about that last week, and it still bothered us. That was some lady's, probably her mother's ring. It was an old diamond ring. But just by not doing the right thing, she didn't get that ring back.
Right.
And that's what it is.
Right.
You know, I mean, for me, you know, it's just.
Wow. So making a choice to do the right thing. What's right is right, and what's
Exactly.
wrong is wrong.
Exactly.
That's exactly right. Oh, wow.
That's how you grow. We're talking about
That's
growth.
how
I mean,
you
that's just
grow.
growth. I mean, there shouldn't be any thought process. You see
Right.
people on TV all the time doing things. You're thinking, what are you thinking?
Right.
But there again, us as parents, you're a parent now, we have to teach our children. You know, our parents taught us, and hopefully they did, and then we teach our children, they teach theirs. But I think some of us kind of miss it nowadays.
sir.
We're not getting too deep, but
Right.
I mean, that's our job.
Yes, sir.
Take care of your kids, protect them, and teach them.
Yes.
You know, teach them right from wrong, and let them have morals and values.
Right.
You know, now when they get older, if they want to switch, that's them.
Right.
But all we can do is teach. All I can do is give that ring back to that security guard. That's all I can
That's
do.
all you can do. You did your best. I think a good word that can be used for that, this is at least one I've coined for it, is standards. You know, there is a standard procedure. I know, regardless of any type of bad rap McDonald's is going to get, when I order a cheeseburger, it's going to have a bun, a burger, cheese, and bun. You know, I know what's going to be in that box. It might not be good, and they might be all sloppy.
But it's gonna be
whatever.
yours.
But yeah, it'll be mine, and I know that there's at least a burger in there. Hopefully they're doing that good of a job. But I have to look at myself the same way, and it took a long time for me to figure this out. But I have to have a standard. This is the bare minimum,
Right.
and if you set that bare minimum up to where it's has, like you said, value, it still has a high value.
Exactly.
Your standard has value, even when those moments come around. Yes, they're going to be tricky. Yeah, they're going to be hard. We're all human and fallible. We fall short onto anger or sadness or vengeance, spite, whatever. Everyone is, susceptible to those feelings. But like you said, if you can step back and look at it, and you got that standard and that value, you'll do the right thing. It might not be easy for you to do,
Right.
but at least you'll do the right thing. And when years go by, you're driving down the road, like you said, and it pops up into your head, that bitterness won't be there because you know you did what was right. You know, you did the actions that were necessary to keep your heart clean in the future.
Right.
You were looking out for yourself down the road. So I think staying on that path and just keeping those standards and values is at least what worked for me over time.
Saying, excuse me, as we teach, I mean, adults was one thing, and we taught probably more adults than juniors, but I've taught juniors too. But at one time at school, we had exactly the same amount of adults and juniors. We had, I think, 64 juniors and 64 adults at one
Wow.
time. It was exactly the same.
Wow.
But as you teach juniors, and you try to instill that in them. But like I talked about, I think last week or week before last, I only have 1 hour
Right.
a week with them. You know, you can only teach them so much, but they got to be reinforced at home. I think we
Right.
talked about this a little bit. But it's true. But if you set standards, it's just, I don't know, you carry yourself like you want to be.
Right.
You know, you out in public, you carry yourself right, you're neat, you're clean, and, you're not yelling and hooting and hollering. I mean, I don't want to be in some store yelling and one of my students walk in.
Right.
So we set, like I said, standards. And that's, to me, that's very, very important. That's kind of what we start with.
Yeah, I think so too.
But you got to have standards to start
You
with.
have to, right? There's a
If you don't have,
foundation.
exactly. If you have any standards, there's no gold,
Right,
there's no tracks.
cheeseburger. That's right. And so funny. Recognizing those moments, I think, is what is. It used to be more difficult for me, but now at
In
least.
what way?
Well, what I mean is when have I made when am I in that position to make a good choice or a bad one? When I was younger, I just lived. You know what I mean? Who cares? You
Right.
wake up the next day or 2 days later, you're like, oh, that may not have been a good idea.
Right.
I may have just burnt a bridge or caused an argument or something, or worse. But over the years, like right now, I'm pursuing so hard to become this full-time self-employed martial artist. I'm pushing for it harder than probably I ever have. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. It's not a pity party, but there's a lot of nights where I go to sleep really, really late.
Sure.
And wake up real early, and just on this repetitious path. Thank you and Mrs. Autry. I've got some good coffee to start my day off with.
That's good coffee, isn't
It
it?
is great coffee. Yes, sir. I'm drinking 2 or 3 cups a day of it to make all this stuff happen. And sometimes it gets hard.
Yeah.
And I don't say this just as in to tell my story. Anyone who's listening to this, they very well could be, or most likely have, gone through some hard time before.
Sure.
Most people have.
Actually, I think most people I don't care if they're 20 years old or 40 or 50, 60, they've gone through hard times.
Of course.
You know, and maybe not a kid, you know.
Sure.
But because they don't know what hard times are, but when they move out on their own, I think most people have gone through hard times. And the thing is, when you have those hard times, you've got to understand the feeling it was not to do it again.
Right.
You know, you don't want to go through that.
Absolutely.
Do anything it takes, you know.
Yes, sir. That's right.
Now, how about your students? Let's say you have little kids starting to get off the path.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how do you handle that?
Oh, that's a tough one. I've seen students grow a lot of times. Recognizing it, it's weird. I put it to you this way. I've never seen a flower bloom, but I've gone outside and been like, hey, that flower bloomed.
Right.
The student seems to be the exact same way. I never have watched a student just slowly start to blossom. You just turn around one day. As a matter of fact, it's so funny. I was talking to one of my assistant instructors 2 or 3 weeks ago. I kind of tapped him on the shoulder and said, look at the way that guy's standing. He just finished one of the disarms. And when he finished, I was like, man, he's square. Look at him. I mean, wow. When did he start doing that?
Right.
You know, you start to see that growth in them. And maybe you've noticed the same thing. Once the techniques start to grow, they start to grow internally as well. Their attention span gets better. Attitude towards life gets better. They start smiling more. They always report a little bit higher confidence levels because it takes a lot. It takes a long time for the techniques to start to feel really good to you. It takes a while to grow into that.
What causes that, do you know?
Ooh. No, sir, I don't.
They're settling in. They're actually getting settled. You know, let's say you get a new car or a new truck or whatever. And, you know, if you're not used to the knobs and everything, you know, you hit your head or whatever. But you start getting settled in, you're like, yeah, after a couple months, you're like, man, I'm getting used to this.
Right.
I'm getting settled. Students do the same thing. Actually, adults do it more than adults. I mean, adults do it more than kids.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I see adults come in, you know, they're feeling uneasy because they're a white belt and all these black belts around, or green belts or whatever. But after they get a yellow belt and green belt, they start getting settled. And then they walk different, they talk different, they act different, you know, because they're starting to fit in. They have totally settled. It's just like concrete, anything else. Once it settles, it's got a strong foundation.
Wow.
You know? And it's no different than students. Those students get a solid foundation. They're like, wow, this feels good. And that's what it is. That's why I'll start using them a lot more when I see adults that way.
Yes, sir.
They're, you know, a candidate for assistant instructor.
Right.
You know.
Right. Yes, sir. That is a really good point. I never quite thought about it, but that happened to me. You're exactly right. Right around that green beltish, closer to purple belt level.
Yeah.
You're right. It didn't feel like, okay, I'm going to go to martial arts class now. I got to, you know what I mean? You're going and you're like, awesome, another day of class. Here I go. You know, you start knowing some people. You start feeling pretty good about some of the techniques. And your questions are not, what did you do? It's, how did you do? You start getting a little more settled in.
And people asking you questions.
That's right.
Since they long, how did you do this?
Right. You're very right.
Because
Wow.
you're settled in, and they want to feel that. They don't know how to do it yet, because you didn't either when you first came. When you first came, you didn't say hardly a word. I remember that.
Yes,
You stood in the corner and did a couple of techniques. You're out of there.
Yes.
That was, 12 years ago. But that's what happens.
Right.
But the more you get settled, you're like, it's just like a home or a house or a job.
Right.
People have these new jobs, you know, they're a newbie. And all of a sudden, one day, they're just settled.
You're right.
Go ask Bob over there. Go ask Frank. Go ask Ann. Go ask Betty or whoever. She's been there 2 years. She'll know.
Right.
People start coming to her. She's like, yeah, okay, we'll do it this way. Now she feels settled.
Right.
That's what happens. It's just
Wow.
like concrete. It just sets up.
That makes so much sense.
Not that I know much about concrete.
Yes,
I know
sir.
it gets hard.
That's funny. Wow. So, man, that's a really good point. I'm starting to make little connections because I feel like I just now started to settle into real life, you know?
Yeah.
Getting a house and, you know, baby and, you know, just really settling into life. You're 100% right on that because now I feel a lot more comfortable about things.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is, like you said, it's kind of like I'm not so much a newbie anymore, you
Right.
know? Whereas, you know, if I talk to a waiter or a waitress or I'm, you know, seeing somebody in a gas station parking lot or something, they don't speak to me the way they did, you know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, of course.
Right.
You know? Now I'm kind of looked at like as if I'm one of them. I'm like in the adult club, you know,
Right.
like a buddy. And it's so funny to think about that because, again, I don't know when the flower bloomed. I don't know what happened or what the moment was. But now that I've been through that, it seems like it's getting a little easier in my life to recognize when those moments of growth are taking place. You know, it's you can kind of start to spot it. You're like, that flower's going to bloom pretty soon, and I can feel that in myself right now and moving through life and saying, it's not long. This is going to do well. This is going to grow. Again, just make right decisions, stay on the path, keep a good standard and high value. And before you know it, boom, it's going to happen. I have no doubt in my mind that this martial arts is going to take off. You know what I mean? I have no doubt in my mind that we have a school and everything's going to go well.
You will. I mean, it just takes time.
Yes,
People
sir.
say that all the time. They say, well, and here's the thing about it. I can give you what happened to me, how my school went, how I made it grow. But it might not happen that way to you.
Sure.
Everybody's experience is different.
Yes, sir.
What happens to me might not happen to you. What happens to you might not happen to the next person.
Right.
People are so quick. Well, let me tell you, you need to do this, you need to do that.
Right.
Well, what you need to do is just do what you do.
Yes.
You figure it out. You know what's best for you.
Right.
That's what the old saying is, don't tell your secrets to people,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what they're talking about, because they want to put doubt in your mind.
Right.
Hey, I'm going to open me a hot dog stand. I'm going to have a hot dog. Well, that'll never work because there's a hamburger stand down the street.
Right.
Well, how do you know?
Right.
You know.
That's so funny you say that, because the very first thing you talked about was people that prevent your growth or people that prevent themselves from growing. And to keep this whole flower analogy going, I've kind of carried on here, is that you ever noticed if you're driving past a field, there's just nothing out in the field. There could be a bunch of weeds and old beat up plants or whatever. You don't think nothing of it. It just looks like a normal old field.
Right.
But if you had a pretty flower there right next to that flower, you're like, ooh, there's weeds growing next to that. And it seems like the people who can't grow, and we all go through phases of that, that's whatever. But if they're going through that phase where they can't grow, like you said, they're trying to take you down, you notice that because it's next to a flower. If all the weeds are gathered together, it just kind of looks like dirty grass. But if it's next to something good that's trying to grow and that weed's coming by, you notice it and it stands out.
Invasion.
Yes, sir. It's like a little invasion. You pick that thing out.
That's what it is.
You're right. Keep your secrets is a good thing. I heard someone say one day, if they don't know your dreams, they can't shoot them down.
That's right.
And
And most of the time it's jealousy.
oh, it is.
Most of the time it is.
Yes, sir.
When I first started my first school, gosh, it was, 40 years ago. I was trying to start a school and I told a couple of my buddies, they just laughed. You'll never have a school. Well, how do you know?
Right.
How many schools do you have?
Right, exactly.
Right,
exactly.
It's just like anything. You see politicians or salespeople, whatever. Well, they're doing that wrong. Well, how would you do it? How
Right.
come you're not there?
Right.
It's just people are jealous.
That's right.
They really are, and it's sad. I mean, I'm not saying all people. Don't get me wrong.
No.
But a lot of people are just jealous, and a lot of times it's your best friend.
Yeah.
Because they don't want you to do better than them.
That's right.
And me, I want you to have 10 million students.
Of course.
And I want to be their testimony.
Yes, sir. Right. Yes,
We
sir.
have a blast, doing
Yes, sir.
seminars.
I enjoy seeing people grow.
I do too.
enjoy. I mean, and you
Even
guys.
people that hurt you.
Yes.
And that's what people don't
Right.
understand. Honest to goodness.
I'm
I've
so
had
glad
people,
you said that.
we've had a couple people that attacked me and you both through our school. And I don't wish nothing bad on them. I don't. I mean, if they won the lottery I think they didn't do right, but that's just my opinion.
Right.
They might not think I did right, but I've never lied, cheated, or stole in my life to anybody.
Yes, sir.
I'm not going to do it. But I want them to do good.
Right.
I say my prayers. I want them to do good. I do. I'd love for them to. But that's what makes us grow.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I just do it more for myself too.
Yes, sir. Right. Right.
But it's true.
Yeah, but I'd be happy if I found out someone who had some bitterness removed, just to get a little bit of peace in there. Because I've been bitter towards people before.
Yeah, we all have.
Of course,
We all have.
you hold grudges against somebody at some point in time, and it doesn't help you. It doesn't feel good. It kind of holds you down and gets in the way of things. And in my experience, it prevented me from being able to create new friendships. 'Cause I had trust issues with people. But when you get that little, it's almost like a prick. You know what I mean? You get that little splinter out of there, and things start moving a little bit better.
It's true.
It's amazing. We have a couple of people in the chat here. Pool Mike says, when I am complimented by someone, excuse me, when I am complimented by someone as one of my role models, I feel that I have grown. Oh, that's very true. Very, very true. He says when one of his role models compliments him, that's when he feels like he's grown.
Yeah, I can see that.
I can.
Oh,
I live that.
I do too.
I live that.
had an instructor one time. I was doing private lessons up in Statesville for years. And I went up there, and he was a man of few words. I mean, few words. He would never hardly say anything. If he did it, I told you it was dry.
Right.
Dry sense of humor. Well, one day, I remember it to this day. I'll remember it forever. I was doing the techniques. I was struggling with it, so I went back 2 or 3 weeks later. I just kept doing it. And one day I was by myself. I was doing a disarm or a choke or somebody on something. I turned around and I looked at it, and he was like,
Oh,
just
wow.
a little tiny grin, just a little
Wow.
grin. That's the same thing as hugging me.
Yes, sir,
I wanted
right.
to hug him. I better not, you know.
Right,
The
yes,
guy's
sir.
got a red and white belt on. I'm not hugging him. But, you know, the thing is, he gave me that little grin.
Wow.
And that was just like he's talking about.
Right.
You know, wow, what a way it made me feel.
Right,
You
yes,
can't
sir.
describe it.
No, sir.
You cannot describe
Right.
it.
It's like getting like a Nobel Peace Prize or
Exactly.
something. It's like the
How you doing,
ultimate
Mr. Paul
award.
Mike? Mr. Ben, we hope you're watching.
Actually, Ben Hunter, Customs comes in and says, who were some of the biggest role models you've ever had? Well, you're looking at them. My instructor certainly is probably the greatest influence I've had on my life, other than some type of, figure in the Bible or something like that. It would definitely be you. I can't think of much. Actually, this might sound really weird. I was watching a documentary yesterday. I was cooking something in the kitchen, and I heard about Jim Carrey. How many times he failed trying to get onto Saturday Night Live or a couple other gigs. He had like a solid decade there where everywhere he turned, he just kept failing and failing. But he kept this mentality the whole time of all it was a sign to me that door was closing. But it means nothing to me. That just wasn't the way for me to go.
Right.
Another door will open. And he just kept a good attitude about it. When I heard that, I was like, that's very good. I think I might adopt that. Just always remember that, it don't matter how many times you shoot it. You shoot that basketball 10,000 times. Sometimes all it takes is just one shot.
Right.
So just keep on shooting,
That's a good question. I guess, my biggest role model was my dad, by far. He took so much time with me and talked to me and explained. I could go to him, and this sounds kind of weird, I guess, but I could go to him for anything, any kind of problem I had. We'd sit down and we'd talk about it. I could be 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. If I got in a bit of trouble, Dad, what would I do? He said, let's just sit down and talk about it. He said, well, first of all, you should have done this, or that. So I know that. He said, but you've already done it, so let's talk about the next part.
Right.
I was like, okay.
That's good.
That's what he did. Never really got mad at me, Now, when I was little, I did something wrong. He scolded me pretty good, but, but he was a role model. I mean, I could talk to him about anything, but by far he was my role model. And then a couple of instructors I had,
Right.
even a couple of students that I had through
Really?
the years. When I was young, when I first started, I had some students come in and not role model, but I respected them a lot. I guess that was more so. A couple of the instructors I had were role models. I know we picked up a couple of guys from out of town. I came in from Japan one time, and I was just like, being in their presence just shocked me. It was so cool. I was young. I was only 16. But as you go through, you can have a main or big role model, but you can have people that influence you, and that's the difference.
Right.
But that's a great question.
No, that is a really good question. I'd like to hear some of their responses as well. Mr. Ben Hunter, who do you think, and Paul Mike, who do you think may have been some of your greatest role models that you've had in your life?
Exactly.
That'd be fun to hear what you guys have to say about that. It's amazing. Those role models, in a lot of ways, and I'm sure it's the same way for you, kind of guide you through those moments of growth. We just keep. Yes, sir.
I'm serious.
I believe it. Yes, sir.
That lady sitting right there.
Yes, sir. I believe it. To keep on the metaphor of plants.
She kept me straight a lot of days. I get aggravated.
Yes, sir.
But you're not the same person.
Those role models help a lot. Keep you going. I've got a little raspberry bush that I bought a couple weeks ago, and it's been in the ground, and it's really growing, and it's doing really well. And I noticed today, one of it's just a little branch starting to come up, and it's starting to curve over. And it's going to cast too much shade on the rest of the plant. And so I've got a little chicken wire that I've got behind it. It's a little trellis. So I just kind of wove that thing on up. And I think you've done that for me, and I'm sure many other instructors and guidance and role models do that for people, is that you can grow, and growth is great. That's awesome. We'll get more raspberries. I don't want to go in quite that direction. That's not the way I want it to grow. Growth is good, but let me just shift it over this way just a little bit. And I think maybe that's kind of the difference between myself and someone who is a seasoned instructor, someone who's a seasoned counselor. Because right now, anytime I see a student grow, I'm like, yippee, just get excited about it. But over the time, I'd hope to really hone my skills in as an instructor, and not just celebrate their growth and help them grow, but also help them down the path, the right direction.
Let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say, I don't know, 14, 15, 16-year-old, because that's ones that usually really having a hard time with their
Right.
little life, you know.
Right.
They come up to you and say, Sensei Long, you're a role model, and I really think you're doing a good job, but I'm just think I'm too far gone to help.
Oh, jeez.
This happens. I mean, it might not happen yet, but this will happen to you. And I've had them say, Master Archie, I think you're a good instructor, but I do things that I just don't know. I just need some help in this category. That, to me, is one of the hardest things to take care of, because it's hard to come back down to a 13, 14-year-old that you don't live with, it's not your son.
Right.
And they watch TV, they watch videos and stuff. They like what you do, they like what you say, but they don't believe it's really good.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Wow. Wow.
Because they haven't experienced the growth yet. Now, that's a different growth than we were talking about a little while ago. That's what popped in my mind. I was going to say that, but I just saved it.
That is a really good one. That's so funny. I don't know if I have an answer to that. I was the same way. When I came in and I saw those things happening in your school, and I saw the way the instructors carried themselves, just the good-natured stuff. In some ways, I didn't believe it was true. It just, and in the beginning at least, I thought that.
Right.
But then, I started hanging around a little bit after class, or I'd come by on a Saturday and we'd do some demos, or we'd go out together. I'd sit in the back seat of the truck and just stay real quiet, and we'd make our way off to do a demo or go somewhere. And it took some time before I realized, like, wait a second, they're really living the way they say they are. It's not just words. They really do this. And to me, what it did is it gave me hope. It's like, okay, wait a second. It's actually possible.
Right.
It's possible to
Right.
do this and to have high values and high standards for
Sure.
yourself and really live it out. It's not just words and fake. So if somebody were to say that to me, all I would know is to just ask them why and just share my experience with martial arts. That's all I have.
I was at the dojo one day, and I forget the lady's name. I forget the student's name. I can see him. I just forget their name. He came in. His mom said, ask Master Autry. I was at Matthews. And I said, what's going on? He told me the same thing. He said, I like what you do. I like what you say. And I like what you teach. My mom does. But I don't think it's working for me, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not really sure. I said, okay. He was a purple belt. No, yeah, I think he was a purple belt. I said, okay. He had his uniform on. I said, do me a favor. I said, take that belt off. He said, yes, sir. He took it off. I said, set it over there. I went and got a white belt on. I said, put this white belt on for a minute. I said, guess what? You don't know anything about martial arts. You're going to learn a little bit more. Put the yellow belt on. Now put a green belt on. I got a green belt. I said, now put back on your purple belt. How long did it take you to get that? He said, 2 years. I said, well, 2 years from now, everything you're telling me is not going to matter because you'll learn, just like you did with those belts. His mom said, wow, thank you. I said, you're not going to learn this overnight. What I teach you or what somebody else teaches you, that's not what you do. It took you 2 years to get that purple belt. It's going to take you 2 years to answer those questions. It don't come that fast.
Wow.
It doesn't for anybody. Why do you think we go on stages? I said, it's the same way. His mom actually hugged me.
Wow.
Walking out there. It's not that I did anything great, but that's the only thing I know to do.
Right.
Because it caught me off guard. I didn't know what else. I have to go back to martial arts.
Right.
That's all I know.
Yes.
I don't know about mechanics. I don't know anything. I know martial arts. I'm not a mechanic or anything.
Right. Yes, sir.
But I know martial arts. I know people.
Right.
And that's the way I handle it. The reason I'm telling you this, one day you might get to
Yes,
use that.
that's amazing, actually.
But he was just like content with it. You know?
Yes, sir. Wow, that's such a great answer.
That was a Matthews.
That's such a great answer. Actually, I think that can be applied to myself or anybody else out there who's willing to listen to that, because that's like, as soon as you said it, it's like, man, yeah, that's I can relate.
Yeah.
I think most people probably can. Would you believe it's past 8 o'clock? It's 8:05.
Really.
Yes, sir. Wow. So that was a lot of fun. I really
That was
enjoyed
quick.
that.
We worked out an hour. I'm sweating.
Yes.
We had fun working out.
Yes, sir. Wow, that was so much fun. What a great conversation. Pool Mike and Ben and all the lurkers out there, we thank you guys so much. We do appreciate you guys' company and hanging out here with us. And, take a second just to recognize the the growth in this channel. That's my cheesy content creator joke of the day. But sir, thank you so much for doing this. I do
Thank you.
appreciate
I
it.
appreciate it.
Guys, we'll be back here again next Tuesday, every Tuesday, live at 8 p.m.
7:30.
Excuse me. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you. 7:30
7:30
Eastern. Yeah, thank you very much.
It's going to feel like 8 to y'all.
Yeah, right. So, guys, thank you so much. We appreciate your attendance. We hope you have a great rest
Have
of
a
your
good night,
evening.
guys.
Bye.